Stephen Cook, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Great pleasure.
The UN, the Arab League envoy Kofi Annan said today that the violence must end by April 12th. Do you foresee Assad complying with this non-binding call to end the violence?
Not at all. I think he will increase the level of violence over the course of the week that he's now been given to end the violence, and he'll use this non-binding diplomatic initiative in ways in order to press his advantage on the battlefield. There's nothing that Assad has done over the course of this now year-long uprising to suggest that he would comply with what the UN has now demanded.
So this brings out the problems with diplomacy, something that you actually touched upon in your Atlantic article last month. Would you go far as to say that the international community is in a degree of helplessness on Syria?
Well, I think there are limits to diplomacy. Clearly, the Assad regime believes that it is in the fight for its life, and all of its incentives are to continue to fight. That over the course of many months, as the Turkish government, as the American government, as the UN, as the Arab League have turned up the diplomatic pressure on Assad, the killing has continued. Not only has it continued, the rate of killing has increased as a result. So one of the inspirations for writing that piece in the Atlantic magazine was to suggest how we might think about going about dealing with the situations by other means, and that is intervention in Syria.
Do you think that a military intervention is feasible? I mean, can you talk us through the dynamics of a military intervention?
Well, let me just say that it is an extraordinarily difficult and dangerous task, and none of the options that experts have developed over the course of the months of debate about a military option in Syria are foolproof, are ones that will not lead to additional bloodshed. But the question is, how long will the international community stand by and allow Assad to continue to kill his own people until perhaps he snuffs out people who are, by most measures, although there are exceptions to it, demanding peaceful change in the country. So in terms of what the international community can do, there has been discussion of carving out safe zones. That's something that the Turkish government has considered. There is the idea of not just a no-fly zone, but actually providing what one would call close air support of sorts, that is going after artillery and tanks that are being used against the Syrian population, and then of course arming the Free Syrian Army. Those three options are often talked about as three different options. It strikes me they are part of one strategy to deal with this issue should there be a decision to undertake international intervention.
You've spoken about Turkey and its role here. Turkey seems to be perhaps ahead of the international community on this issue. You know, they want to create buffer zones, as you mentioned. How do you see Turkey's role in Syria?
Well, it is an extraordinary switch. At first, the Turks' Prime Minister Erdogan and Foreign Minister Davutoglu had given Assad time to reform, had engaged in a fair amount of shuttle diplomacy, and there was a sense that Turkey was in some ways holding back the international community, that the Obama administration, for example, was not pursuing a more robust policy because it was concerned about Turkish equities in Syria. Now the situation seems to have flipped, whereas the Turks are wanting to demonstrate a certain amount of leadership on the issue, have been in recent weeks more forward-thinking on the question of international intervention. It has been the Obama administration that has been holding back. I think that there are real concerns about international intervention and what that means for the stability of Syria and the surrounding countries. But the question remains, how long can the international community sit by and watch this killing happen? And of course, it has national security implications for Turkey. Just before we went on the air, I saw one report that close to 3,000 Syrians had crossed the border into Turkey just in the last 24 hours. This is clearly going to put pressure on the Turkish ability to provide relief for them, and it raises the question about how instability could spill over into southeastern Turkey.
So then, how do you see the Obama administration's handling of Syria, especially with this respective leading from behind concept?
Well, I do think that it is time for the Obama administration to rethink the leading from behind policy that they have pursued thus far. Nobody has a tremendous appetite for undertaking more military action in the Middle East at this time, and you can certainly understand that after the events of the last decade. However, this is something different. This is a humanitarian intervention. In addition to it being a humanitarian intervention, there is enormous geostrategic benefit to the United States by seeing the end of the Assad regime in terms of achieving an objective that the United States has long held, which is to isolate Iran from the region so it can no longer play a malevolent role in the region. So it strikes me that if we have a clear sense of what Assad is doing, we have two choices. At this point, we should consider a more robust policy that would include international intervention, or we need to reconcile ourselves to the fact that Assad may very well hang on and in the process kill a lot of people.
Pursuing a more robust policy, do you think that this is possible without Russian agreement to that policy?
Well, I'm not sure why anyone would want to abrogate their rights and responsibilities to conduct their own foreign policy to another country. Certainly much has been made about having international legal cover for action in Syria. I know that's something that's very important to the Turkish government. However, there's nothing in writing anywhere that says that you have to have a UN Security Council resolution authorizing action in the international arena. I certainly wouldn't want, as I said before, to abrogate my own rights and responsibilities in the international arena to another country. So it would obviously be more difficult without Russian cooperation or assent to an international operation, but I don't think it's impossible.
Stephen Cook, do you envision any possibility that this crisis ends with Assad remaining in power?
Well, I think that there's the possibility that he shoots his way out of his own problem. There's nothing that indicates to me that his downfall is inevitable. I know that Kofi Annan's mission, the logical conclusion of it would be that he would step aside in some way. I don't see how at this point that happens, and if he does, then we just have someone else at the head of the same regime with the same kinds of incentives to pursue similar kinds of policies as the current president of Syria.
Stephen Cook of the Council on Foreign Relations, I really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much.
A great pleasure, as always.
Thank you.